Welcome back to Bombastic Nation and Ting and Ting and Ting. I'm Mr. Jad and I'm back with some more vibes for all you. And I did a video a while back about Britain abolishing the slave trade. And came across this one here by History Matters. It's called Why Did Britain Abolish Slavery? Now, I decided let me take a look at this and see what reasons is given. In the last video, I said that to me it seems more like a political move. Some people said no, it's humanity, and it doesn't matter what the reasons were that they abolished it, as long as it was abolished. So I want to watch this here, and it's a short animated documentary, really short. It's like what, 3 minutes and 13 seconds. Uh, uh, it's a short space of time, but I just want to see what it is being said. Okay, so let's go ahead and YouTube and simmer and see what's going on here.
The abolition of slavery and the slave trade is often cited as one of the proudest moments in British history. Britain certainly wasn't the first nation to abolish it, nor would it be the last, but Britain's abolition was followed by a concerted effort to end it worldwide. In 1772, an English court declared that standing on English soil automatically made a man free, because Parliament had never gone to the effort to introduce slavery legally. Across the empire, the slave trade was abolished in 1807, but not the institution of slavery itself. This meant that people could continue to own slaves, but generally couldn't buy or sell them. The owning of slaves itself was outlawed throughout the British Empire in 1833, with the exception of India and a few other territories. This, notably, came at an incredible cost to the British Treasury, since they opted to pay the slave owners for their lost revenues. In fact, the British government got into so much debt for this that the loan taken out by Prime Minister Viscount Melbourne wasn't paid off until the premiership of David Cameron in 2015. If slavery was still incredibly lucrative, why did Britain not only end it but place itself into a mountain of debt whilst also further committing to end it globally? Now, there were many reasons, but the first is perhaps the most obvious. It was seen as being morally abhorrent. Famous abolitionists such as William Wilberforce and Henry Thornton argued that Britain had a special
Heard of
duty
William
to the
Wilberforce
British Empire
before?
to end slavery throughout the world. Another reason for ending slavery throughout the British Empire was purely economic. Whilst the slave trade was profitable, slavery itself, particularly that in the Caribbean sugar plantations, was becoming less so. Furthermore, most of the empire's money was now being made in China and India. I mean, why sell people to the Caribbean when you can simply sell drugs to the Chinese instead? The final reason was political. In the late 18th century, there had been a large colonial lobby in Parliament who sought to have the interests of slave owners taken into account. With the American Revolution out of the way, the number of slaves and slave owners in the empire was now halved, and so who cared what they thought anymore? After the formal abolition, Britain committed the Royal Navy to patrolling the Atlantic Ocean to end the slave trade for everyone, irrespective of whether or not they wanted to. So just because slavery had been abolished, that didn't mean that things improved immediately for the recently freed. Most either continued working on plantations.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it there because he said some things in there that resonated. Uh, According to this, the main thing was economic. You know what I mean? He also said, and let's take that into consideration here, the people, they abolished it and they paid the plantation owners. So the slaves were like, hey, you're free, do whatever. Now, let me start by saying this, and it's quite obvious. And some people got upset because I didn't go, yeah, you know, they abolished it and stuff, and thank you, thank you. Hey, thank you. But that doesn't mean that the practices of the slave trade died when it was abolished. It didn't, especially in the colonies. Yeah, slaves were free, but they were still working for the same plantation owners, some for just food. They weren't educated. You know, education wasn't widely available to them until later. You know what I mean? So the practices remain for a while after. Yes, things take time to change. I totally understand that. But the thing about it is that remnants of the mentality of the slave trade still exist today. Recently, several, I'm not talking about here. I, I don't know what is said in Britain. I don't know what is said in the rest of the world, but I live here. So let me tell you what I've heard here. Within the last couple of years, leaders, certain leaders, not all of them, and not the majority of them, certain of them here says that black people were better off during the slave trade. Which, from my point of view, and from my experiences, they wish that the slave trade was still there. People complain that black people bring up the slave trade all the time. Well, if we don't, we'll just slip right back into it. Because the people who are saying, oh, well, I had nothing to do with it, you know what I mean, it ain't got nothing to do with me, most of them aren't speaking up. And if you don't speak up and talk about the mistakes in the past, we are prone to repeat those mistakes. That's just an absolute fact. You look through history, you see that everywhere. Now, I was told that, oh, he just have his opinion, you don't want to hear anybody else's. That's not the truth. I was also told, you playing the victim. Okay, let me draw from my own experiences. And remember what I said. I said that the way people are treated here is direct remnants of the mentality of the slave trade. Like right now, they're fighting, do not teach about this in school, do not teach about that in school. And again, if you don't know about it, how are you going to not make the same mistake? Now, I personally, I don't talk about racism to my white friends. I don't talk about the slave trade to my white self, and I'll tell you why. And I'm going to tell you some stuff that I haven't even told other people. I just keep it to myself. And you tell me if I'm playing the victim when I don't talk about these things to people. You want to know why? Because every time I say something happens, oh, you playing the victim. You think because you were slaves that you're victim. I was married to a white woman. And I hate to put it that way because she's a good person. Didn't think about stuff like that at all. Pure human. Pure human. But the things I went through while being married to her is something else. When my son was born, a family member, the first question is, he don't look black, does he? Instead of saying, congratulations, is he healthy? He don't look black, does he? That's the first question I have. Now you tell me. I still didn't feel like a victim though, because I don't really care what they think. I consider myself pure human. When I got married, somebody says, I don't want that N word in my house. Because I'm beneath. Because of the history. Huh? And I ain't mad, I'm just telling you why some people bring it up all the time. Because they experience the remnants of the mentality from that era. And I know most people don't think like that because they're too busy trying to survive, just like we are too busy trying to survive. But when you have leaders saying we were better off under the slave trade because we had a roof over our head and a place and food to eat, which is what we have right now. So what's the difference? And I know walking home from work at night, a year ago, die N-word, die slave. This is what I'm hearing. Me, who doesn't talk about it, is constantly reminded of it. Now, you might say, I'm talking about it playing the victim. But what you call being a victim is my reality. It's happening to me as we speak. Recently, somebody at work called a co-worker and another woman the N-word straight up. And then called the cops. Because, you know, when somebody got upset and she got smacked in the head with broccoli. And she called the cops, you know. because she figured if the cops come, they're gonna arrest them because hey, I'm better than them. Another co-worker got called the N-word in the parking lot. And I could go on and on. But if I go on and on, you're all going to say, oh, you're just playing the victim. There's nothing to fix. When people threatening to kill you because of the color of your skin, calling you a slave, and you should be back in slavery. And like I said, I don't know how it is there. This is what I'm hearing here. Oh, and by the way, people are going to say, if that's happening to here, why don't you go back home? The first time I got called the N-word, I was laying flat on my face with an M16 on the back of my head, and I heard, don't move, N. So I'm not even safe there. And I'm saying all of this, and here is where it goes. We don't talk to each other. I don't. Because if I do, people get uncomfortable. And I'm not even blaming them for it. I'm just saying something that happened to me, hoping that they would try to make a change or a difference. I never go up and say, well, you're people and you this and no. I just say something. And automatically they go, oh, you're trying to blame me for it, and I wasn't even born then, and I wasn't. No, I'm not talking about then. I'm talking about now. How we gonna fix now? You understand what I mean? They try to teach about black people in schools here, and they're fighting against it. Just forget it, they said. In the meantime, there are people running around wanting to have it happen again. If you bury your head in the sand and don't pay attention to the past and how the past affect how we get here, how are we going to fix it? How are we going to solve it? Maybe this don't make sense to you all, or to some of you all, but that's my reality. It doesn't matter how much good I do. The first thing I hear when when somebody disagree with me, bam, that's the first thing I hear. Slave, monkey, N-word, uppity enna. I've heard it all. See, I don't talk about it. I'm too busy trying to be the best human being I can be. And the best way for me to do that is to communicate. But if I try to communicate and you tell me I'm playing the victim, then what's the point? I'm going to talk to somebody else who wants to communicate. People get angry if I don't agree with what they're saying, and they're saying it's my opinion. My reality tells me something different. It ain't your fault what happened in the past. But if you sit around and let what happened in the past affect how the future, how the present is, and how the future will be, you figure that out yourself. How we gonna be? It's crazy. I mean, we can't even talk about it to find a solution. You know what I mean? Is there a solution? Yeah, we talk to each other. We find out about each other. This is the reason why, one of the reasons why I like history so much and I like culture so much. I want to learn as much as other people. Because when you talk to people, you realize there's not a consensus of the way people think. Just because certain leaders say certain things doesn't mean the people believe it or the people practice it. No, I'm not saying it doesn't happen that way. Yeah, it happens that way. Of course, depending on the situation. But at some point, we have to sit down and talk about it. At some point, we have to sit down and realize what is happening around us. The truth of the matter is, it's poor versus rich right now. That's just the straight up truth. Because there's a lot of rich black people who look down on poor black people. You see it all over Africa. See it here. Let's keep watching this here.
For poor wages or were simply left to starve. That said, some efforts were made to take former slaves to Sierra Leone, one of the many African colonies set up to take former slaves. Furthermore, Britain was pursuing free trade during parts of the 19th century, which meant that for many, many years, Britons were still buying sugar from slave plantations, not to mention cotton from places like the American South. British India continued to use a system of near slavery called indenturing until 1860, and the empire profited massively from these practices. Britain undoubtedly had a large hand in ending the global slave trade and dedicated a colossal amount of money and effort towards doing so. Britain had given up on the slave trade, but that didn't mean it no longer profited from slavery, at least in the short term. The difficulty of this topic comes from weighing up the value of Britain being at the forefront of abolitionism against the fact that over the centuries it was responsible for the sale of over 3 million people. I hope you enjoyed this episode and thank you for watching. A special thanks to all of these patrons you see on screen for their generosity in supporting the show.
Okay, this was really short, and I really would like to find something more in depth on it. But, I just wanted to kind of touch base. Listen, we all here on this earth. Nobody's going anywhere anytime soon. Unless Mother Nature gets angry and go, wipe out. So we got to find some way of being victims. And we got to find a way to stop being victims. And we got to find another way to communicate so that mentality don't become prevalent. And I always say, the best thing you could do to start, the first thing we have to do is to start looking at each other as just simply humans. I live here. Both black and white people living from paycheck to paycheck, struggling to make it. But then leaders come and say, well, it's the black people that's causing it. And I'm telling you, I'm speaking from experience. I talk to a lot of people. And then the poor white people go, yeah, it's their fault. They're on welfare. They have this. And then where I work, 90% of the people that come through the line on welfare is white people. But the leaders are saying black people are causing the issue. That's because the poor black people and poor white people really don't talk to each other. We don't. We do, but it's non-consequential stuff we talk about. I could tell you straight up, I don't feel less than nobody. That'll never happen. And it takes a lot to get to that point. First, you educate yourself. I did. Now, this ain't boasting. I'm telling you what I did to get to the point where I am. I get even on a comment I got on one of my videos to tell me that I'm an enner and I have no power. You think that fazed me? I have the power of being human, just like you have the power of being human. It's one race, the human race. Cliche, but true. Factual. I ain't trying to change nobody's mind, just trying to tell you my side of the story. Hit me up in the comment section. Tell me your side of the story. No cursing at each other, no calling each other's names, no dissension. Because that's the problem mainly. We don't want to listen. Hey, I get that way sometime too. I'm struggling with it myself. But I could honestly say 95% of the time, I'll sit and listen to you. You think as humans, if you're right, because you're not the same color as me, I'm going to pick the other side because I'm that color? That's not going to happen. I'm going to go with the human side. That's what people need to start doing. Hopefully we could get there, man. Hopefully we could get there. Listen, man, I don't care which part of the world you are, what nationality you are, what language you speak, what color you are. Take care of each other, all right? Cool Runnings.